Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast, where we're joined by your hosts, Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. In each episode, we'll be sharing valuable insights and tips to help you turn your NDIS business into a profitable venture. So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, you've come to the right place. Let's stop surviving and start thriving.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast. So good to have you here. My name is Paul and I'm here with my awesome co-host Tania. Tania, how you doing?
Hi guys, lovely to be here. I think there's a little bit of a delay in my internet, but it's wonderful to be here and we have a very special guest today. We are meeting with Yasser from Tender Loving Care. And I'm so excited to be here. Ever since we met Yasser at the ADSCA conference, I have been wanting to get him on the podcast and to share his message and his really inspiring story of how Tender Loving Care has gotten to be the amazing success it is today. I've got Yasser's bio, so I'm going to read that out. It is Yasser is an experienced and inspirational executive leader with strategic vision to grow a commercially sustainable and ethical organization. He has a passion for developing high-performing teams through a collaborative, engaging leadership style. Yasser has implemented bold strategies and innovative initiatives that have transformed Tender Loving Care's performance and reputation. Under his leadership, TLC has expanded into new markets and achieved record-breaking growth and profitability. By focusing on customer and employee experience, Yasser develops and delivers on growth and strategic direction. Yasser serves on boards for several not-for-profit organizations, supported causes such as education, healthcare, and environmental sustainability. Throughout his career, he has received numerous awards and accolades, including named APAC CEO of the Year 2023. Through his inspiring leadership, visionary insights, and unwavering commitment to excellence, Yasser has become a role model and inspiration for countless people around the world. And I can definitely attest to that because I am completely in love with all of the things that Yasser does and completely inspired by the amazing things that have been achieved. So welcome to the show, Yasser. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Wonderful. So I guess to begin with, Yasser, do you want to give us a little bit of background about Tender Loving Care, the group of organizations, and I guess where all of this started and what it is exactly that you do today?
Alrighty. So the story starts when I first joined the disability sector as a support worker. And it was just because I wanted to do good, and I had that principle and understanding that you become a lot happier by helping people. Yeah. And I pursued that process. And then once I got in, I wanted to do more and educate myself more. So I went and did a lot of studies in that sector, including social work, Set 3-4 diploma in disability, because I believe that if you want to deliver good, and you want to help people, you want to help them the best way you can. So when you learn more, you deliver better services. And I pursued that, a lot of on-the-job learning and education as well. So that was the drive behind it all. And as I went through the career, I worked all the way up until I became a senior executive in some of the organizations. I went into government. I worked with the government for a while. And then the NDIS came about. And the NDIS was an opportunity to shift the thinking that not all the services needs to be from a non-for-profit arm, and not all the services that comes from the non-for-profit arm is the best services that can be delivered. And sometimes being a business means you can help more people and deliver greatness because you have that level of flexibility in the way you operate. So I decided if I want to do more for people, I need to have a level of control. And I go very wild with my thinking. I'm quite innovative in the way I would like to deliver things. And I had a lot of restrictions doing that under the non-for-profit arms. And the only way to do it was to actually venture out and go into the private side of things. And that's how Tender Loving Care was born. to deliver good things for people that otherwise becomes very difficult to achieve.
That's fantastic. I think a lot of our listeners would probably really be on board with that, is, working somewhere as opposed to having the autonomy to do the really cool things you'd like to be able to do and help people in certain ways. I think a lot of our listeners will be able to really agree with that. I know you've got a few different areas that you operate, businesses and in government and not-for-profits. Could you give us a bit of an idea of the different spaces that you're currently operating in?
So as any successful business, you build up your purpose, right? So everything you do has to be evolved around your purpose, right? And that from that you get your value systems, your strategic planning, and your business growth planning. But it has to be around the same purpose. Our purpose is to provide better health and better lives for people that are vulnerable in general. So that goes for disability, aged care, and other. And from there, we branched out into multiple businesses. We recognize that if I keep relying 100% on government funding, it automatically means that I have to be controlled by those guidelines and I cannot get as creative as I'd like to be. So we branched out to commercialize the level of the revenue so we can use that and help people a bit more and give them access to opportunities that otherwise becomes a bit hard for them. And from there, we started multiple businesses on national and international levels. And that includes, a TLC travel, which opens independent travel. We also do consultancies to government to be accessible travel destinations for people with disability.
Great.
And we've done that with multiple regions. The Tuscany region in Italy is one of them. We did a bit of work in Dubai as well of similar things. And now we're in discussions with Turkey to do that, to make them accessible destinations for people with disability. We also have an arm where on an employment pathway arm. So when we started the services, we started to identify where are the areas that we needed to do and what are the quick wins and what are the long-term plans. Quick wins were the immediate what we've had, which providing the core, social community, daily activity, that kind of stuff. But then we wanted to go into employment services and not the classical way of doing it like ADEs and the likes. So we opened up a food arm, called it May Foods. And that's imports and exports. And then we also now make our own coffees that we pass into our coffee shops.
Awesome.
And hopefully more commercialized. And in that, we put a principle that we said 70% of the employees are going to be people with disability, open employment, and non-government funded. That will become a business that generates revenue that can pay and cover the cost of that. That's another arm, which is a whole running business on its own.
Yeah.
And that's going well. And on Thursday, we have the function that you guys are aware of that is launching the manufacturing arm of that. I don't want to say too much in that space because it's a surprise for the day, but it's massive. It's huge. We also have the domestic cleaning services arm, which supports people to gain a bit of independence in that side. And it's around skills development. So we don't just go in and do cleaning. We actually develop a program. And now we're improving in that program as we're speaking, actually. To improve people's skills and independence. We then, and we have multiple other things. So we have the aged care arm and all that. But then we decided that it's time for us to go outside of the norm. How can we improve quality? And how can we share what we know somewhere else? And when the COVID hit, we had a lot of challenges at the time. And how can we also make sure that the organization survives the unknown, which the pandemic was unknown. No one had predictions on what it would look like. So we explored the international market. And in the middle of that mayhem, we succeeded to establish in 7 different countries plus Australia. So in total, we were in 8 different countries. And they're all running very successfully and a mix of multiple things. So we went into the technology arm. So we have robots that does home care and supports people. That's a big part of our AI technology arm. We also do government consultancy. So we advise government on policy writing, guidelines, how to apply best practice, United Nations Convention. We got some countries to sign into that and then extract the rules and make sure that we create an implementation plan for them. And that was sort of a big piece, and I can go on and on about that, but that's actually really a good what we do, because we're changing the world, not just one area to
Yeah, I like
accommodate
that.
for people. Our last baby, and I'll stop at that. So we did all the services, we did the employment, and the one thing we were missing in our plan was education. How can we contribute to education? And we started looking at the gaps in that space, and we found that one of the big gaps that we identified is there was a massive shift towards moving people with disability, and autism is one of them, into mainstream schooling, which I get the reasons behind it and the principles behind it. But we also put the pressure on the kids that have autism to somehow fit in with the kids that don't have autism, right? To into the mainstream. So they're the ones that have to work harder, and they're the ones that have to deal with the change, and they're the ones that have to go to the special classes. And that created, in my opinion, a little bit of, unrest in behaviors and things like that. While I believe that we should have done a mixed and integrated model where also mainstream kids could integrate the other way around, because it's a lot easier for them to connect on the other side and create a platform for it. So we decided to launch our TLC Autism Schools, and that's the current projects. We targeted 3 countries as a starting point. Dubai will be the first one, and then Australia, and then Egypt. And the reason is Egypt is a very vulnerable community. I think they need that education. Dubai is a good testing model, because when we went to do it, we want to do it good and special and successfully. So we found one of the most successful autism schools in the United States. We went and visited their schools, and we're doing a partnership utilizing the track record proven from the United States.
Yep.
And then combining that with our Australian standards and quality of service delivery, and then delivering a great outcome. So it's a proven track record curriculum that people will be learning from. And Dubai is a good hub for that, because it's got a mix of countries. It's easy to set up. So anyway, I'll stop.
It's amazing. So
it's
you've got inclusive travel, employment pathways, your food arm, your manufacturing arm, your domestic cleaning, your aged care, your technology arm, your schools, your autism schools, and then of course your disability provider business also. And how many years has TLC been going? How long has it taken you to establish all of those different parts of your business?
So the igniting moment was 2016. The launching year was 2017.
So that's 5 years?
7.
7 years. It's 7 years to build all of that out. Now I know, most people struggle to get one business to stay alive for 5 years, and yet you've managed to make multiple successful businesses. I guess what is your secret? How can you grow into so many diverse areas so quickly and all of those be successful?
So I'm going to revert a little bit into the business mindset a little bit, so it adds up. So one of the principles of starting a business is that what brought you here is not going to take you there, right? Which means that not because certain things worked at a certain point of time, it means it's going to work at another point of time. So a constant restructure and applying business education into the way we do things was very important. So we went into market segmentation, finding the right place to start, building up the team around it, making sure that we are very aware and informed. We don't do steps randomly. Nothing we've done was just a random, let's go and do that. Everything was actually through process, very rigid process, a lot of checks and balances to do that. And then a level of innovation, innovative thinking. So we started a lot of businesses that are successful, and we started understanding what are the recipes for success. We have some. Passion is one of them. We're passionate about what we do, so that drives us. And then we apply all the other bits and pieces. So innovative thinking, changing the way business are delivered. We applied what we call blue ocean strategy, which is basically delivering a very different way of delivering business to people to cover a gap and polarize things towards you. Rather than going out there and searching for clients, we generate demand. So we avoided the competition. We've never competed with anyone. None of our marketing campaigns are targeted at anyone. None of that. We don't do targeted campaigns. And we focus so much on being so different and so unique. So we don't have to compete with anyone. So we do what everyone else does, but then we also do very special things that you can only access it through. So, so that's a critical side of the success. And then once you ignite that starting force of the business, you start running it as an independent running business, which is very important. Because when you start mixing things too much, you run thin on resources, but also you open yourself up to confusion. And confusion in business is not really, it doesn't help the success.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. So there's a lot of different places that our listeners might be. And, you mentioned, for instance, what got you here won't get you to the next stage. And I definitely see a lot of providers are trying to do what, they see larger providers doing when they're smaller and looking to grow. I'd love to know in that process of, from stage 1 to stage 2, and as you've sort of grown, what are some of the challenges you've faced, in adding a new arm to your business, or in entering a new market space, or a new country even? What are some of those big challenges you've had to overcome?
So my biggest challenge that I always face is getting everyone on the train, right? To match my vision. Yeah. I go wild with my vision, and I know that, right? Because I dream big. But if you know me well, you will know that if I decided to do it, I will not stop until it's done. I'm a very, very determined person, and I don't endeavor on achieving something unless I'm sure that I've done all my homework around it, and I believe in what it's going to deliver significantly. So I have clarity on how to get there. Because one of the principles that I apply is you set the goal, you set the methodology, and you have to have clarity about how you're going to get there. You understand what the steps are that requires from you to get there. Then applying that methodology to your own skill sets. Where do I sit? Where does my skills sit to achieve that? And then whatever I'm missing, I start relying on my team. But they have to share the same vision. And that's one of the challenges that I would say. Is making sure everyone sees what I'm saying. Because I go into all these different things. In my head, they all make sense. In my head, they're actually very organized and they all intertwine nicely.
Yep.
But sometimes people around me don't see it the same way I see it. So if I get that right, and if they come on the same vision, because the train is going forward, right? So people are either in or out. Because the train doesn't stop. Now, I want people in, I don't want them out. So how do I do that? I have to align them with my vision very well. So the more I'm clear about communicating my vision, the better outcomes I get.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think having that really, that clear communication, the ability to be able to articulate, hey, everyone, this is where we're going. This is where the train's heading. Jump on board. This is what's happening. And then you can really define who's on team and who's going in a different direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think there's lots of gold in that. I specifically love that you don't try and stop dreaming big, that you realize that you're going to dream big and you're not trying to appease other people or, trying to have goals that other people might think are achievable, but actually setting what you want to achieve. It's more than a goal. It almost seems like it's your mission. It's your mission to solve these problems, to make the impact that you can. And by being so clear and confident in that, you're then being able to align everybody else with the certainty, I suppose, that this is possible, as opposed to questioning yourself and letting other people that have doubt that it's possible. You're really showing them with clarity, well, yes, it's possible, and this is how we're going to do it. And this is the role that you play, and this is how we're going to do this together, and I guess taking them on that journey. That's an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yes.
There's so much there that you must be so immensely proud of. But if you were to boil it down to an achievement that you would say is what you're most proud of, what would that be?
My team. I've got a few people that are around me that were there from day one. They still are with me till today. And the growth they've had was significant because they had to cope with the growth of the organization. Right? So remember, what brought you here is not going to take you there. That includes your team, your structures, everything. So everyone has to be on the same journey of upskilling, learning, developing, all that kind of stuff. So I would say my team comes first because they motivate me like you have no idea. I love my team. And people that don't fit in the culture and don't fit in the vision, and they don't see the vision, they don't usually last. They drop out of the train. Yeah. And we don't like people going, but sometimes that's what's necessary to help people and to deliver greatness. And we're not saying we do everything perfect. We have our own flaws and errors. The difference is not about not doing mistakes. The difference is about what you do about the mistakes.
Yeah, cool.
And we endorse mistakes. When we say that it's a lot of movements, and I get asked all the time, how did you go to Dubai? I would like to go there. And I'm like, are you going because someone else went? Or are you going because that's part of your vision and part of what you want? What is the motivation behind it? And if the motivation behind it is the right motivation, that's the great starting point. But I never get tired because there's 10,000 things running at the same time. I endorse the journey. I'm on the journey. I've accepted that. I want that. And I just endorse the challenges that come with it. While I've seen a lot of people in business like, oh my God, it's too much happening. One of my 2024 resolution is when people ask, how are you? It's become a new thing that we say, I'm busy. I've seen it so many times. There's someone, how are you? Busy. It's crazy. But I love it. And I'm like, busy is not a status, right?
Yeah.
And it became a status because everyone is under that belief system. And if you put it in your head that you're busy, everything is going to be around you feels crazy and hectic and non-stop. So I try as much as I can to avoid saying that anymore. I always have time to do things that I'm passionate about, and I always have time to deliver the things that I want to deliver. So when someone asks me, how are you? As much as I can, I try to say whether I'm well or not, and I give them a status.
Yeah, beautiful. I think busy has almost become a badge of honor amongst entrepreneurs. So, I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm flat out because I'm successful, But I think you're absolutely right there. It's not actually a status symbol,
Right. Agree.
You've moved into so many aligned areas, and obviously you're on this train you've got running at the moment, and you've spoken a bit about innovation and continuous improvement. I wonder if you could outline, I guess, your process for innovation or how it's really played a key role in developing new areas and expanding into new locations and that sort of thing.
So it all starts from the principle of when we started looking at our strategy of applying the applied strategy to the business, we looked at two main strategies, red ocean and blue ocean strategy. And I'm happy to explain it briefly if you'd like me to. So red ocean is pretty much doing what everyone else does, but what sets you apart from your competitors is the way you present them. So your customer service, your colors, your logos, the way you talk, the way you present. But essentially what you're providing is the same thing as everyone else. And there's multiple examples like that. If you talk about technology companies like Harvey Norman, for example, and JB Hi-Fi, a lot of the products are pretty much identical, same warranty, same everything, sometimes even same prices. The difference is that JB Hi-Fi has more targeted the younger generation, a little bit more cool, a bit of music around, while Harvey Norman is more mature people and businesses. Right? But essentially, they're selling the same products. Mm-hmm. What makes them different is the customer service and the representation they have. That's called the red ocean strategy approach. And that's very common in our NDIS world because everyone pretty much is abiding by the NDIS rules, core capital capacity building services, and whatever is dictated in the plan. Rightly so. And there's nothing wrong with that. a lot of successful business like the ones I mentioned, extremely successful, and applying that. Great.
Mm-hmm.
The blue ocean is when you do something completely different to complement the norm, while you become the missing link in the market, and then you can become innovative. And the only way to do that is through innovation, right? You have to come up with ideas that no one else does to go far, not particularly making it sound like that, but in essence, it's the same as everyone else, but actually doing something that no one else has done before. It's harder, trickier, and if you don't get it right, your business can suffer. Right?
Yes.
And a simple example to that is Apple. So Apple uses iOS operating system, or everyone else uses Android. Apple has the integrated systems, but it doesn't integrate with a lot of the external things. That's a blue ocean approach, setting themselves apart. And for the ecosystem to work well, then you need to have an Apple phone, an Apple Watch, an Apple laptop. Otherwise, the ecosystem doesn't work 100%. This is the concept that we came in. We come from a very educated approach, and we chose blue ocean, which is a lot more challenging, but it requires a lot of innovation for it to work. So the language you use has to be blue ocean. The way you present yourself has to be blue ocean. Your team has to think the same way, and you have to start endorsing blue ocean in everything you do. So if you start looking at all our initiatives, we do what everyone else does still. There's nothing wrong with that. But what sets us apart is not what everything else happening. It's the unique programs that we run. The AI, the robotics, the travel, the accessible travel, the consultants to government, the employment pathway we offer, open employment, non-government funding, zero government funding, the coffee shop innovation, the coffee manufacturing, where we have our own blend of coffees that you cannot have from anyone else but us, and that's coming in the launch.
Love it.
So all these things that we're doing is what has taken us to that blue ocean arm. And the advantage of that is you get market dominance in that space. So the things we do, only us do it, and we're already ahead. But we'll also completely avoid the competition mentality, and we work with the collaboration mentality. And that's what we are about. We love that. So we start working with others to try and make things work, and we try to add value to them, and they add value to us, and we build relationships because we're not competing. We're doing something that is a bit different anyway.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that our listeners should definitely get a hold of Blue Ocean Strategy, the book, and have a look through that, because it definitely does outline it really well. And, the fact that you've been able to find those areas where you can not compete, but actually just stand out in a whole other area is absolutely key to finding areas of innovation. You lean into your passion so much more when you are innovating, as opposed to just following the status quo. Right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I think that's really important.
Well, I'm interested then, you have such a diverse range of businesses, and you have such we haven't spoken about your many qualifications and your the many networks that you have in different areas. But you have talked about things like continuing to develop yourself, looking at your gaps, etc. Do you think that the difference between how you do things and why you've been so successful is about your mindset first and foremost? And I guess that leads me to, what advice would you give to people who are wanting to achieve some of the things that you've achieved with TLC?
Okay. So the first side of it is definitely your mindset plays a big part of it. And why are you doing what you're doing? It's so important within yourself, in your heart, to know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. What's the motivation behind it? Running a successful business and generating revenues and all that, there's no shame in that, right? But if that's what you do, then you need to be in terms with it. What I do is not that. So even though I believe strongly that for us to help more people and help them well, we need to run successful businesses. Because you help a lot less people and you create a lot more problems for people if you're not running a successful. If you cannot run your backyard well, how you can run someone's life or help someone to improve their life or being able to be an added value to someone's life? So it's so important to get the backyard right and get the business to be running well and apply business principles to do that. So coming into terms of why you're doing what you're doing and the the purpose behind what you do is so important. That automatically sets your mindset on what you want to achieve and how much are you willing to endorse challenges, because there are challenges to everybody. Every business has challenges, different challenges. The scale goes bigger and smaller based on the business and its operation, but everyone has challenges. How do you deal with these challenges comes from how much you believe in what you're trying to achieve. But if you don't come into terms with what you're trying to achieve, that's a dangerous zone. So if I'm pursuing profitability all the time, which is nothing wrong with that, but not particularly there after helping people, and then everything I do and say is about helping people, then I'm sitting in two different minds.
Yes.
That's a problem. Come into terms with what you're trying to achieve and then pursue that and be honest about it to yourself first and to your team so everyone can align with you. And then pursue that, because that gives you motivation to never stop until you get there. I never stop. If I'm set on a task, I'm set on the task until it delivers. And that is because I only set on tasks that I believe that the outcome will service and help vulnerable people. So it motivates me. It's very important to do that. So that's the first side of the question. Can you remind me of the second side of the question? I'm trying to
What advice would you give to someone that is looking to create some of the success that you have had?
Yes. Look, I'm going to share my experiences. I'm not a believer in advice. I've got a principle behind that, if you don't mind me. I will share my experiences, and if people learn from it, it would be great. And I'm more than happy to share as much as necessary. And then people can take from it what works for them. Because advice means all aspects has to match for it to work. Yeah. What works for me might not work for others. But I can say what works for me, and people can take from it and apply it to themselves. And then if it matches, it's great.
Great.
So success has multiple pillars to it. Right? And if you're not clear about the pillars to achieve that success, you already started at a very difficult space. The first thing in these pillars is, are you ready? Are you the best person in the job? Are you the right person to run the job? A lot of founders of businesses jump into their positions specifically because they're the founders. And I don't believe that's good enough. So I don't like to be told founder. This is language that I never use. You'll never see it on my social media. You never see it in anything. Even when you ask me what do you do, I always prefer to say the global CEO of the Loving Care. And the reason is it holds me accountable to everybody. Being a founder sometimes implies, in my opinion, that there's no accountability. You're in your position just because you're the founder and you have the power to do that. But let me tell you, I'm not in my position because I've earned that position. I worked very hard to be in it. I studied, I learned, I had on-the-job experience. I worked all the way up, and I continuously study. I just came back from Stanford not long ago. I'm going to Harvard again. I work on myself non-stop to always stay relevant to the innovation of management and running and leading a big organization like ours, and being the right person for the job. So that's the starting point. Asking yourself, are you the right person for the job? Are you actually the person that can lead that? And if not, there's no shame from stepping aside and getting someone that can do it better. And if you get that balance right, you're already on the trajectory of success.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there's so many things in there, isn't there? I think I particularly like the idea that it's really about accountability, what you're talking about. I think the most powerful thing that I ever heard as a business owner, and the scariest thing, was that no one's coming to save you, right? Like, it's empowering, but it's also really scary that it actually all sits on your shoulders. You're accountable for the success of meeting those goals, whether that is, not just because you're the founder, not just because you're the CEO, because for you, it sounds like it's very personal, that it's your personal mission to achieve this. And so therefore, it's all up to you to achieve this. And of course, you have an amazing team that helps you get there, but the vision that you hold around what you want to achieve, and how you've spoken about it being completely non-negotiable, like this is absolutely going to happen, It doesn't matter which way it's going to happen. When we met, you told me some amazing stories about examples of how you just didn't take no for an answer, and how you found a way, even where there really wasn't one, you created another way of getting there. And it sounds like potentially that is really a key to your success, is your mindset, your ability to not give up and to be creative in the solutions, and this deep passion for what you're trying to achieve, and not giving up on that regardless of what others might say or what challenges you seem to encounter as you go through. And I think that's incredibly inspiring, and definitely a good example for business owners. I feel like sometimes in the NDIS space, and look, in other spaces, we're so busy blaming other people for the challenges. We get upset at government for giving us the wrong funding, or we get upset that the participants not funded the right amount, and that causes us challenges. And we want to kind of blame other people because it seems a little bit easier, as opposed to going, right, well, these are the cards that we've been dealt. Now what? How do we go from here? How do we find the solution? As opposed to complaining about what has happened, the situation, or whatever might have occurred. It seems like you're very solutions focused, and you see everything as an opportunity. Even how you spoke about COVID and the amazing growth of your business during COVID, where most people would have sat back and been like, right, okay, well, we can't go into other countries. Not much happened internationally during COVID, and yet somehow you managed to open in 8 countries during a time where we couldn't travel. We had all of these huge restrictions. So I think that sounds like that's your secret potentially to success, is really personal, and your philosophy or your approach around dealing with adversity.
Thank you.
Look, we've heard a lot about...
One of the things that I've done, just when you spoke, sorry to interrupt, Paul.
You're right.
When you spoke about accountability, for example, I built a board to hold me accountable. So I have my advisory board that I go in the room, and it's World War III in that room, and I hire them, and I work with them. Yet I give them all the powers to question all my decisions, because if I'm not held accountable, and if I cannot answer for everything I'm doing, then I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
I should be equipped with all the knowledge to be able to deliver. So if no one is questioning me, then I'm prone to do mistakes. But if I can create that, so sometimes we have to create that, because how do you have it when you're a founder? How do you have it? So you have to create it, and to create someone to question you, it takes a lot of guts. Trust me, because I go in there, and they rip me apart. Like, this way, I'm like, I'm gonna fire you now, but I don't, of course. I'm just, it's a joke, because it is a green light for them to go in there and actually question what I do.
Yeah,
and accountability is a big thing. Just carrying on from what Tania was saying. Just wanted to add that.
That reminds me of Facebook. Apparently, I was told recently that Facebook have a whole team that is dedicated to hacking Facebook and bringing Facebook down. And their whole idea is that if they can find weaknesses in their system and hire someone to sit inside the business to try and bring it down constantly, then they will find weaknesses that everyone else is already looking for. So it kind of reminds me of the same thing. If you can have people internally to give you critical feedback and to, to question you and to make sure that you're on the right track and have that level of transparency, and I guess it is criticism, for you to have to defend and to give those questions, then you know that whatever you take to market or whatever the project is going to work, because you've had people scrutinize it from every angle. You've seen it from every perspective and looked for solutions to overcome that. And it almost reminds me of how I've never happened to me personally, but in the movies, how people prepare for examination, like you have people firing all these questions at you so that you can prepare those answers and really prepared when it comes to whatever's going to happen next, whether it's explaining that to a politician or the NDIS commission or, in my case, usually the worst auditor that there is. If you can get it past the worst auditor in the room, then we know it's going to get through. That kind of idea, I think it does just add to the robustness of a business. And I think myself as a business owner, it's really tempting to surround yourself with people who believe in you and are inspired by you and want the best for you. But those people sometimes have a really hard time challenging you. Yes. And I know in my leadership team, in Strawberry, in my e-learning business, having a manager that just says yes to me all the time and agrees with me never works. I really need someone who's tough enough and say, I don't think you're right. I think that you're completely off base here. And then for me to have to double check that I'm right, and to do that extra piece of due diligence or thinking about something I'm proposing, because maybe I haven't thought about how it affects a certain staff member or a certain contract or a certain stakeholder. And other people are better at those things than me. They might have more interface with the end user or the client, or see it a different way, and really opening up I guess it goes to the blue ocean, thinking about what does this look like and seeing it from every different angle. So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, 100%. I wonder, we've looked at a bundle of things that you're doing. I wonder if you could give us a bit of a insight from your perspective on the NDIS review and the changes that are coming. From where you're standing, do you see, how do you think it will impact the industry and providers in general across the board?
Look, I've read the whole report thoroughly, both of them actually. So my comments are very generalized because the government haven't really particularly endorsed. They've got 6 months to get back to us to endorse or not endorse. Our industry is very vulnerable industry. We get impacted and affected by every and anything. If someone comes in the media and say one word, changes the narrative and creates fear. But one of the biggest things the independent review highlighted is that the ongoing discussion around unregistered providers versus registered providers. So last year there is 150,000 claims made for unregistered providers, while there is 16,000 active registered providers. Right? So when we start talking about all the providers that are not doing the right thing, and I hear it all the time, we're talking about the minority here. We're not talking about the majority anymore. Okay. So that's a major issue that the independent review has highlighted. Now, how to tackle that problem is a bit tricky. Are we taking away choice and control? Should we regulate that? When we're not really coming near choice and control, we're just saying, if you're really passionate about providing good service for people, maybe you should be compliant with the rules that says, the United Nations says this is the best practice. Why is that a bad thing? We're not saying that for the participant to particularly choose one over the other, completely up to them who they choose. But the people that want to work in that sector should somehow have a level of accountability.
Yeah.
While when we're focusing on the 16,000 that are registered actively, they're actually only 10% now in the market. That's a worry, because the 150,000 that I'm talking about, it's not even the number. The number is bigger than that. It's estimated at 200,000 providers that are unregistered.
Yeah, wow.
So we're talking about the commission, which they're working around the clock, but they're only dealing with 10%. They don't deal with client matters. They only deal with code of conduct breaches with unregistered providers. That's it. And there's no set regulations in order in place. It's a problem. And the review highlights that as an issue. And I totally agree that it's an issue. Again, am I imposing? And I get that the cost of the auditing is high, and I get that there is pressure on smaller ones that struggle with it. And I do agree there's an importance of having providers to give variety of choices, to keep the cost down. I completely get that and I understand it from that perspective. But it still poses a problem and a high risk, because our focus on target and everything we talk about is about the 10% of the providers.
Yeah.
Everything I hear on the news is about the NDIS registered providers. Every fraud case that we've seen, NDIS registered providers. Having said that, they are only 10%. If that's happening in the 10% that are heavily regulated, what is happening in the ones that are not regulated?
Yeah.
And that raises a question. I don't have the answer, and I don't want to particularly impose my opinion on the answer, but I think that needs to be looked at. I think that creates a problem. And we all know there's languages around the NDIS, the budget problems, how is that going to look like? They're estimating that in the next 5 years, it's going to be close to $100 billion scheme. That is not successful. We're hearing all this language, creating fear for the clients. If I'm a person with disability, everyone's fighting over how much I'm getting, but no one is really paying attention to the areas that can be improved. I mean, they are paying attention, but I think the fear and the noises around the sustainability is very loud. And it's sometimes, in my personal opinion, it's louder than the solutions that we're proposing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, and our industry is an industry of fear. People are worried. If you're a provider and if you're not set up in a way that shows you that you're not doing the wrong thing, people straight away, you're another NDIS provider.
Yeah.
It's seen as a cash cow thing, even though the statistics show that the profitability in it, if an organization running at a mid-size, is 2 to 10% only. So it's not a big cash cow thing unless you have offshore operations, unless your overheads are controlled, unless you're managing well, or unless you're a sizable organization to offset some of your overhead costs.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you're struggling. So this is, I can go on and on about it because the review is multiple million words in it. But that's the independent review. And I think that's the biggest discussion that we're going to hear about, whether to register unregistered providers or not. I do think there should be some sort of regulation, but also respecting the fact that they might not afford full capacity audits, and how can the government maybe give some resources and use people's experience like Tanya's in that space and utilize the resources that people built and maybe give access at a reduced cost to ensure the level of accountability. In my opinion, the Royal Commission report targeted more access and some of the recommendations around sports education, health, and that kind of stuff. And I think they're all important files that needs to be looked at. This is, my, I can go on about the reports for the next 10 hours if you want me to.
Yeah. I think for me, obviously, as an auditor, I know that there's challenges with the registration process, and I don't think anyone's saying that it's perfect. It definitely needs to be overhauled. I think what they've suggested with the 4 levels makes some sense. I think I'm very concerned about unregistered providers, I guess, for many reasons, but for me, it boils down to that it doesn't make that every other government-funded scheme, you need to be endorsed to some level to be a provider. So let's look at childcare centres. You can't just open a childcare centre in your home and charge people using government money. You either need to be registered as a childcare centre and go through a CEQA accreditation for your state, or you need to go through family daycare and be registered as a family daycare scheme. If I want a private nanny in my house, that's my choice, but I'm not going to get the government subsidy to have a private nanny. If I want the subsidy, then I have to go to an approved centre through a childcare centre, as an example. The same as if I want to go and use my Medicare, I have to go to a doctor who is registered with AHPRA and as at a medical centre who has a licence, so I can get the government funding. And so for me, the idea of choice and control, and I don't have a disability, I don't pose to understand choice and control from that perspective. But from my angle of every government system that I use as a taxpayer and as a consumer, I know that I can get government funding to go to a public hospital, and I know I pay out of my pocket if I want to go to a private hospital. I don't understand why the same system can't be in place, and there's still some level of choice and control, because I can choose to go to the public provider or I can choose to go to a private provider and pay out of my pocket. And I know people with disability might not have the funds to pay the gap, and that is, a challenge. But if we make the system easy enough for people to register at lower levels, so, when I've said this online, the trolls come out and get me and talk about, well, I can't then go to Kmart to get my chair, my commode chair, because, Kmart is cheaper than going to the chemist that has a accreditation. But if we make it an easy enough barrier and we push back on Kmart and we say to Kmart, it's a really simple process for you to get registered so that these people can use Kmart products under their plan, then surely Kmart's going to do it, right? Like, I've registered almost every chemist I've helped them go through. A verification is $800 and lasts you 3 years. There's really not a business argument for Kmart not to do that. $800 for 3 years. I'm I don't do registrations currently, but I would be happy to help Kmart and do it for free for them if it meant that that helped with choice and control. But I feel like there's many solutions to this idea of choice and control. And I think that when we look at choice and control, it has to come secondary to our duty of care of providing people who are vulnerable with good levels of care. It's similar, I get people call me sometimes and say, oh, my participant doesn't want me to call an ambulance. It's their choice and control. And I'm like, well, no, you have a duty of care to make sure that they get medical attention before we're worried around their choice and control. And for me, it's a similar argument. Don't we need to make sure that people are safely looked after by people who know what they're doing before we're worrying about their choice and control? For me, it's a human rights issue if we're allowing people to be mistreated by unregistered providers who have no barrier to entry. There needs to be some barrier to entry. Like there's even a barrier to entry for almost every business you can think of. Why would we not have the same standard for people with disability? It kind of hurts my brain when you look at it from that perspective.
I think in all honesty, where do you draw the line, and how do you create control? So what you're saying is I totally agree with in principle. But if I'm sitting look, I'm not particularly taking one side over the other. I just run a business that deals with multiple governments, and I have a level of. And if I'm sitting in the government shoes and saying I'm going to now control Kmart and then 10,000 other businesses to do similar things, where do I draw the line, and where do I get the level of control? Does it come from the consumer laws? Does it come from the NDIS laws? Does it come from the federal? Does it come from the state? You get lost in the details, and it's impossible to do. And if we need to, sometimes what makes sense doesn't always mean it's doable. Okay?
Yeah.
I think if we pay attention to what is doable and start from that point first, it could automatically push everyone else to comply with simple things as when back in the days only non-for-profits did, and I don't particularly support that, but I'm saying in principle, then if you want to provide disability care, you more likely have to be not-for-profit, otherwise you can't. Right? Except with some exceptions, obviously. When the NDIS came in, registered providers was important thing, so everyone registered. Right? It was, if you want to provide services, you need to do that. If you want to be a doctor, you need to register. If you want to be an OT or a psych, you need to register. There's always a governing body that supports that. You mentioned family daycares and childcares. Aged care is the same. If you want to provide the services, you need to be registered. I think it should be matching into that from what we can control. We know we can control that segment, so let's pay attention to that. To provide disability care, everyone should have some sort of an accountability, to safeguard the client. But we shifted away from a lot of the initial principles. And when we talk about products, if Kmart wants to register, I agree. There should be some sort of a business liaison officer within the scheme or within the commission that can educate businesses that impact investment doubles your return. And that's why all the big businesses, McDonald's has the Ronald McDonald's House, Wally's has the Wally's Foundation, Emirates Airlines has the Emirates Foundation, because impact investments in general does increase your return. Everyone knows that. It almost doubles it in the statistical numbers. So if we educate the Kmarts of the world and the likes, then I'm sure they would have no problems doing that from a business perspective if it's going to increase the return and create a business education behind it. And I think that's where you can have control in delivery and you do the quick wins. Eventually that will reduce the barriers, will reduce the risks, because we know the risks are there. There's no question about it. The amount of times I see people providing care for people with disability that are not registered, it happens from the register, don't get me wrong. But there is a process in managing that in the register. If someone does the wrong thing, we have to report, we have reportable incidents, we have all these restrictive practices. I've seen so many times people do restrictive practices on the street, and I actually walk up to them and was like, this is restrictive. I was like, what does that mean? Like, where do you work? I'm an independent worker. They don't intentionally do it wrong, I'd like to think anyway. But for sure, sometimes they do the wrong thing without knowing. And that's usually even the worst case. Because if you do something wrong without knowing, how do you correct it?
Yeah.
That's in my 2 cents of totally personal view about the thing. That is an issue that needs to be tackled. And if if we create a control measure around what we can control, that could be starting point, and it automatically will have a flow-on effect that others will buy into it, and education will increase into the community and businesses, and hopefully we'll do that. And people will lead by example, and then creates that healthy competitive market for the greater good of the participants. The other thing is the NDIS is an insurance scheme. When it was designed, which I was very involved in the early stages of it, it was about someone coming in with a skill set. We help them out to build more skill sets, so eventually not have to rely on the scheme and exit the scheme. I have not heard one story of someone exited the scheme.
Yeah.
We shifted away from where it all came about.
Yeah.
You know, are we saying that people are not improving? What are we trying to say? Are people are not really becoming independent? Well, let me tell you numerous amount of stories that I know of people that came into services, ours and others, that started being isolated, not engaging, not feeling, the right self-esteem, all that kind of self-confidence, you name it. And now they're out looking for work, getting jobs, mixing up with communities. And I have numerous amount of stories. And on the function on Thursday, some of this will be coming out. And we have one participant that is now asking us, I don't need the scheme anymore. That's success. I have done my job when I can get people out of the scheme, not because I want them to come out of the scheme, but because they actually don't need it anymore.
Yes.
And there's no that though,
sorry?
Is there? There's no incentive for a provider to do that.
Not at all.
Right? And
not at all. And that is the problem.
Providers, it's usually money. It's usually money for doing something. It's how you incentivize corporate, business goals. And until that's really something a provider can be rewarded for, it's probably not something that's going to happen.
Or it's embedded in the process. So if I can't, because I don't want to say, I know a lot of providers that passionately want to make a difference. I've met so many, and I'm proud to have met them. The issue is, yes, they might not be incentivized, but a lot don't even know how to do it. I mean, the scheme was designed that way, but the implementation never really directed to that. And I'm saying, let's put the measures in place. We started with the NDIS talking about goals, and then we break the goals and how we do that. I talk to people about goals and say, all right, have you done a task analysis to that, breaking into the milestones and achieving those milestones to achieve the greater goal? And I have numerous amounts of people who don't even know what's a task analysis. This is an old buried language that we used back in the 15 years ago days. Why is it gone? I mean, it's a goal-driven scheme designed to help people to achieve their goals. And the more they achieve their goals, the more independence they're getting. And the more independence they're getting, the more they don't actually need to rely on the scheme. They can rely on the skills they acquired. That is something that I think we need to look at significantly. And with that, the government buying into it, it's hard because there's so much that gets put on the provider. I think we have to cut them a bit of slack. So much gets put on the providers that they have to pick the pieces. And if they want to pursue that with the government, it's very hard to communicate. How do you talk to them? We used to have liaison officers. They don't exist anymore. We used to have contact officers. They don't exist anymore. You send something in the world of the NDIS, don't even know where it goes. You send something from New South Wales, you pick a call from Perth. There's reasons behind it, integrity and all that. I get it, but we need better solutions, and there is work happening, and I'd like to see more of it. And we can only contribute, and we're happy to contribute.
Beautiful. Like you brought up a really key point there, that it is an insurance scheme, right? The idea is that people should be, exiting from the system. I think there's a bit of a misnomer in people's understanding around is an insurance scheme or a welfare scheme, because it's definitely getting painted with a certain brush at this point. I think that people really need to understand that, it should have a progress in it rather than a just maintenance at the end of the day.
I think that way.
You started that way, yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd love to know what's next for TLC and for you personally. What are the next big things that you're working on that you are okay with telling us about at this point?
Look, there's two very projects that I alluded to earlier, and they're very close to my heart. So one is the autism school. That's a big piece for me.
Love it.
I'm the way I'm doing it. I mean, still a long way out, but knowing me, I won't stop until I do it. But the problem with that model is a lot of people with a disability are from a lower socioeconomic background, right? Where if you want to provide private schooling, they have to pay towards it, and that will pose a problem for them, right? So I've come up with a creative mind that I'm hoping will come nicely together, is to start with what I call the elite sort of 5-star type of schooling for the cohort that is more can afford that type of schooling, right? So you know how people send their kids to private schools and pay significant amount of money for good education. We will do that, right? And we will have how some cars like Toyota has the Lexus and that kind of stuff. Yeah, but it's essentially the same car. That's what we want to do. And then from the finances we can make from the elite education, we will dedicate all of that to fund the education for the people that can afford it, so they can still get elite education at no payment. Yeah. So doing a 2-layer approach and separate them, and we call it market segmentation. So we segment the market, and then we target the people that can afford that level of education, that they want that sort of Lexus type of approach. And then whatever surplus we can create from that as a successful running business model, we know how to do that. We're good at doing that. Then that would be completely dedicated back to help the people that cannot afford, so they can get exactly the same level of education, exactly the same outcome, same curriculum, same everything, without having to pay for it. And we're creating an ecosystem where people that have the ability to contribute to the kids' education at that level, to also help people that cannot contribute to receive the same equal. So we're creating the ecosystem that hopefully will just run into each other, and eventually will deliver an automatic process that we don't have to intervene, because everything we're building needs to go beyond the Yasser as a person. So we're doing a lot of work now to create that if Yasser is not there, everything continues on.
Yeah, I love that.
Amazing.
It's a fantastic model.
So I wish me luck at the early stages, but we're getting there.
Amazing. So I've learned so much from today. I'm going to try and summarize that, and I'm happy for you to fill in the gaps. But what I've learned from today is 2 main things. The first thing is that mindset is key. For me, what you spoke about, if I was to summarize it, is around making sure you're the best person for the job. That includes never stopping to work on yourself. This idea of collaborating and not competing. And that you personally just don't take no for an answer, and that helps you to, drive the results. I like that you talked about a recipe for success, and under that recipe for success, you mentioned passion, innovative thinking, blue ocean strategy, and endorsing challenges. And I guess that's my takeaway from today. Is there any other key things you think that I've missed, Yasser, that you want to add to my list?
You summarized it very well. I mean, no, this is very good. The one thing I always tell businesses, there's no shame of running a profitable business. The shame comes when we're not delivering good work for that profit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to use that as a soundbite to promote our show for sure, being that we're profitable and nurse provider business, and we get a lot of pushback about our name, which was deliberate. We obviously chose it because we believe the same. We believe that you can't run a business unless it's profitable, because it's not sustainable for anybody involved, the employees, the participants, even for the government that's being made.
I'm currently writing a book, and the essence of that book is 2 quotations, one from my dad and one something I believe in. And one says, one hand can clap. So not one person, not one entity, not one organization, not the government only can do it all. Right? We need 2 hands to clap. We all have to put our hands together to deliver greatness for people with disability and other vulnerable communities. That's so important. The other thing that I always go by is a ship without goodness sinks. If you don't have goodness in what you're doing and genuinely want to actually make a difference and change, that ship will sink. It doesn't matter how profitable you get, it will always come down. So always make sure that you put an effort into having goodness in everything you do. Your intentions are good, your willingness is good, your deliverables are good, your quality is good, the best you can. I'm not saying there'll be no mistakes. I'm saying make sure that you do everything you can to deliver goodness, otherwise the ship will sink. Those are the essence of the book, and then the book will drive into with the principles of doing goodness in running a business. On one hand can clap, it means you can actually run a successful business. And the more your business is successful with the right principles, the more profitable you become. And the more profitable you become, the more support and help you can do for people, because you will have a lot more lax decision-making process that you can do to improve people's lives.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, my two main key takeaways are right now, as soon as it comes out, I'm going to definitely need to grab myself a signed copy of the book, which is number one. Number two is this episode is now going to be mandatory listening for all my profitable provider clients, because you've really hit the nail on the head. Because profitable is one thing, but if you haven't got the goodness behind it, you're not people focused, it's also going to not go in the direction you want to. Look, thank you so much for today, Yasser. You've spent some time here really unpacking so much of what has made Tender Love and Care an absolutely amazing force to be reckoned with inside the NDIS and internationally. So, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. And to all our listeners, that's it for today. But please tune in next week for our next episode, where we will be unpacking some more things around building your profitable NDIS business. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast with Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. We hope you found today's episode informative and valuable. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, and share it with others who could benefit from our insights. Until next time, keep thriving.